Hi everyone, it's Mrs. Summerlin again, and I am here to talk to you about devils and a little bit about this Heart of Darkness here. So we're going to get started. I'm on page 13. Marlow has just left the chain gang, which upsets and bothers him greatly, and he starts talking about his feelings about the chain gang. He says, I'm not particularly tender. I've had to strike and I've had to fend off. So Marlowe is basically sort of like asserting his masculinity here. He's assuring the reader that he's not weak. He's seen things, but that this thing has bothered him greatly. And the chain gang is the inciting incident that starts his his problems, his insecurity. He talks here about, I have seen the devil of violence and the devil of greed and the devil of hot desire. So you get devil 1, 2, 3. But by all the stars, these were strong, lusty, red-eyed devils that swayed and drove men, I tell you. But as I stood on the hillside, I foresaw in the blinding sunshine of that land, I would become acquainted with a flabby, pretending, weak-eyed devil of rapacious and pitiless folly. How insidious he could be, too. So we're going to talk about these devils here, because again, Marlowe appears. He's asserting his masculinity. He's discussing why he's not weak, and then he says, one of the things he says is like, I have seen the devil of violence. Now we know what violence is. And he says, I have seen the devil of greed. Now you know what greed is. And then he follows it through. Um, and so, sorry, I got interrupted. The devil of greed, you know what greed is, and the devil of hot desire. So again, that's another way of saying that is lust. So we've got violence, greed, and lust. Those are some of those major sins that you would see in a sort of a biblical sense. And Marlowe is saying, I have seen those things, and they haven't affected me the way that this affected me. He says here, because those devils were strong, lusty, red-eyed devils that swayed and drove men. There's something sort of honest about the strength and the violence of these devils. If you know someone to be violent, if you know somebody to be greedy, if you know somebody to be lustful, at least you know what they're all about. But here he said, I would become acquainted with a flabby, pretending, weak-eyed devil. So flabby, sort of that sort of gluttonous overweightness, pretending, that fakeness, weak-eyed, somebody who has got sort of like shifty eyes, devil of rapacious and pitiless folly. Rapacious is like um, sort of without stopping, sort of over the top, like no holding back, and pitiless, somebody who doesn't really care and doesn't have like pity or care for others. And then folly is foolishness. So the devil that Marlowe meets here in the Congo is somebody who is fake and greedy and shifty and like grabby and pitiless and foolish. He says that this devil here is the worst devil that he's seen. It bothers him in a way that these other sort of upfront devils don't bother him. And it's like the difference between somebody has a terrible temper who's going to punch you in the face and somebody who stabs you in the back. One of those is better than the other. There's just something sort of doubly troublesome about a person who'll stab you in the back, and the sort of shiftiness and deceitfulness of them, and that's what Marlowe's getting at here. He says, I would find out only several months later and 1,000 miles farther, so he's sort of going into the future a little bit. He's going to see that devil farther in. For a moment, I stood appalled. So that's good. Like, at least we know that he has some sort of, like, moral outrage, as though by a warning. Finally, I descended the hill obliquely towards the trees I had seen. So we descend. What I haven't mentioned so far is you definitely have some biblical leanings here, but they're not just biblical, they're Dantean. So you get a little bit of Dante Alighieri's Divine Comedy here, specifically the Inferno, so Dante's Inferno. Violence is circle 7, greed I think is circle 3, hot desire is circle 1, betrayal And lying and thievery, lying and stealing and deception is circle 8. Betrayal is circle 9. So the farther down you get, the worse your sin. So Dante very clearly puts deception, lies, and betrayal lower than he would put violence. And Conrad is mimicking that here. And then when you get the descent of the hill, this is another sort of Dantean moment because we are going down into this artificial hole. And he talks about, like, it doesn't seem to be made for any very particular reason. And in the hole, he sees a lot of imported drain pipes for the settlement that had been tumbled in there, and there wasn't one that was not broken. So there's more of that useless, wasteful imagery. If you're bringing pipes in for like sanitation purposes, like making a sewer system, and you dump them all in a hole and they get broken, they're no good to anybody. So there's more wastefulness. They're supposed to be fixing and improving this land, but they're doing nothing. And he got under the trees. My purpose was to stroll into the shade for a moment. So you come into that, and there's another sort of darkness element there. But no sooner, page 14, within than it seemed to me I had stepped in the gloomy circle of some inferno. Okay, so if you didn't know at this point in time that he's making Dantean allusions, there you go. And in some books some versions of this I have seen, Inferno is capitalized, just to make sure that you understand circles in Infernos. So he feels like he's going into hell. And so he says, it was a mournful stillness of the grove. Nothing stirred. And then he sees these black shapes crouched between the trees. They seem to be clinging to the earth, half coming out, half effaced within the dim light, in all the attitudes of pain, abandonment, and despair. So he sees these people almost at one with the earth, within the earth. They are in various stages of, torment. You get some pain, abandonment, and despair. So various levels of torment, very much like Dante's Inferno, Dante's Hell, where the characters are not really raging. They're overwhelmingly despondent and sad at their circumstances. They grieve for where they are. And so as another mine went off in the cliff, so he keeps hearing these explosions and the land moving beneath his feet, and he says the work went on. Well, they're making a railroad and they're using explosions to sort of tear up the ground. The work went on. The work. So here you get that short sentence sort of gives us this almost this feeling of indignation. How can you think of work when you're looking at something in front of you, like what Marlow sees now, like he sees these people laying amongst these trees dying? How can you their work is so pointless, they're so futile, it's so silly. And this is a place where some of the helpers had withdrawn to die. So not only is this work pointless and not being done effectively, it is ultimately the cause of the suffering that he's seeing. And he's starting to put these pieces together. They were dying slowly, it was very clear. They were not enemies. They were not criminals. They were nothing earthly now, nothing but black shadows of disease and starvation lying confusedly in the greenish gloom. So you come more to that same sort of dehumanization that he felt earlier when he saw the chain gang. And he's like, well, of course they couldn't be enemies. How could they be enemies? These people are so broken. And he reiterates that here. They were not enemies. They were not criminals. They were not even earthly. So they've gone beyond looking like human things to looking like shadows, because they have been broken that far down. Brought from all the recesses of the coast. So they don't even live here. This is not their community. This is not where they're from. They've been imported to do this work here. These moribund shapes were free as air and nearly as thin. I began to distinguish the gleams of eyes in the trees. So you get a little bit of light imagery there. Then glancing down, I saw a face near my hand. And that moment for me is like these individuals are so at one with the earth that they don't even recognize He doesn't even recognize it till he's right up. All right, sorry, I'm back. I got interrupted again. But okay, so he doesn't even recognize that this person is near him until he's right up on him because they're so. There's the change in the light, so Marlow's eyes have to adjust to a darker environment, and they're so still and they're so unearthly and they're so like buried in the earth that he doesn't even recognize. He doesn't recognize this person as a person until it's right there. He goes farther to say the black bones. This person is so emaciated and so broken that he doesn't even he describes them as bones because he doesn't seem like there's much more than that. Reclined at full length with one shoulder against a tree, slowly the eyelids rose and the sunken eyes looked at me, enormous and vacant. So we go back to that idea that they're broken, they're emotionally distant, a kind of blind white flicker in the depths of the orbs which died out slowly. The man seemed young, almost a boy, but it's hard to tell. I found nothing else to do but to offer him one of my good Swedes ship biscuits I had in my pocket. So you get this idea that this person is a boy who has been used and destroyed. So the idea of that potential destroyed, which seems to be happening all over the place, not just with the people, but with the stuff and the ideas. This wasted potential is constant in this book, and here it is wasted in the most horrific way. He gives him this biscuit. That's a cookie for those of you who are not British. They call biscuits cookies. They call cookies biscuits, sorry. The fingers closed slowly on it and held. There was no other movement, no other glance. So it doesn't have him eating it. It just has him holding it, which seems sadder. Because there's this gift here that the person can't even take advantage of. And he was tied with a bit of worsted. He had tied a bit of white worsted around his neck. So that's yarn. So he has like yarn around his neck. Why? Where did he get it? Was it a badge, an ornament, a charm, a proprietary act? So he's like, did he put it there as decoration? Is it put there to show like that someone owns him? Was there any idea at all connected with it? It looks startling around his black neck, this bit of white thread from beyond the seas. So it's not something that was produced here. It has come with them, and there is an oddness here. So either the boy has tied this around his own neck as sort of like an ornamentation, or something interesting, which indicates that he's not so far gone, that he still has these human desires of decoration and interest, or it was tied on there by someone else. And it's yarn. It's not a rope. It's not a chain. It's easily broken. But Marlow looks at this as sort of a symbol for how this boy has ended up in this place, this white yarn, something that has come from somewhere else and attached itself to this boy, and his life is over, is ruined, is gone. And Marlow eventually says, the brother phantoms come along. So all the rest of these individuals sort of sit up, and he notices how many of them are here. And he says, and all about others were scattered in every pose of contorted collapse, as in some picture of a massacre or a pestilence. So you get that idea of a Holocaust, not like the Holocaust, but Holocaust as in small h noun, this destruction. And while I stood horror struck, so you get another image of Marlow's just sort of morals and spirit revolting at what he sees. One of these creatures rose to his hands and knees and went on all fours toward the river to drink. He lapped out of his hand, then sat up in the sunlight, crossing his shins in front of him, and after a time let his woolly head fall to his breastbone. I didn't want any more loitering in the shade. So Marlow can't handle it anymore. He leaves. He has seen something that has truly affected him And this is that young Marlow, that sort of naive Marlow. He's seen something that's truly affected him in a profound way, and he doesn't quite know what to do with that yet. So this is an important turning point for Marlow. This is that inciting incident, that spark that gets him to start thinking about the Europeans' place in the Congo and what is happening to the Congolese in a way that is different from the rest of the people the rest of the Europeans that are here in the Congo. Marlow is now the outside force. He's new in town, and he is seeing things very differently. All right, I hope that was page 14, so you can pick up on page 15. I hope that helped a little bit. See you later.